Alright, today I'm going to be kind of rebuilding two computers. I use basically a 3D printed ATX board with a power supply attached to it to do various tasks like erasing hard drives, that sort of thing. Things I don't want to disassemble my nice water-cooled computer for. I literally keep this in a bin like these, and I just pull it out. There's no motherboard on it right now, but I pull it out and I've got a basic ITX system with onboard video that I can just, plug in a drive controller card or whatever I need to test, whatever it is I'm working on, and just do some quick work on that. It keeps me from having to, one, disassemble that big one like I said, but also I can just run a really low power system. The motherboard I had in this was an Asus board with an 8600K in it. One thing that is becoming very clear is that CPUs, because there's such good competition between AMD and Intel, old motherboards and CPUs are pretty quickly dropping in value. What was once a great, relatively low cost chip is now like nothing. Like, they're really dropping quickly, especially when these new ones come out, 13th gen Intel and Zen 4. Yeah, I put that on eBay. So I tried to get rid of that board, and this is already running 12th gen. This is actually the 12400. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the motherboard out of this, put it in here with a i3. I bought a 12100, and this is going to be my test bench. This case has a long history. I bought it as I was going to make a home theater PC VR system, but I ended up not building it, mostly because just the logistics of my apartment, it just doesn't work out too well having a VR setup right next to the TV. Just bought a Quest 2 and it works perfectly, and I don't need a computer. I mean, it plays Beat Saber. Sure, it doesn't look as pretty as a computer version, but hey, it works, and it was only a couple $100. So my whole plans with this case kind of just fell apart, and I just stuck it in the closet. Eventually, I just bought a cheap ITX board, put it in, and I have a second machine. I want to convert this into more of a capture system for YouTube, because there are a few videos that I want to make that involve screen capture, and obviously I don't want to use my main computer, because the second you try and do anything like that on your main system, you're going to leave like a tax return open or something by accident in the background. So I want a separate isolated system without any personal information that I can do screen capture on. It's only an ITX board, and it's an ITX case, so I have a 10 gig card in there. I don't really want to give up my 10 gig because I'm like that. So I figured I'll just swap out the case to a slightly bigger one. It's not huge. Put in an ATX board that has more slots. I can put in an NVIDIA card. I have a 1050 Ti, so I can do the shadow play recording, which is really good and runs on even a slow machine. This motherboard's going to go here. I'm going to get a bigger motherboard and a bigger case for this. That's about it. So, just kind of like a simple, relaxing build, nothing too fancy. Just an i5 and an i3. Paste feels rather thick considering it's relatively brand new. This is Noctua paste. Oh, guess I can't get away with it. I do have to take off this side. So this is just the i5 12400 that was in this, and I'm going to put it into the new system. You don't actually need a Noctua cooler for an i3, but hey, I have one, and it comes with a cooler, but I don't, I've got this, so I might as well use it. And I have the LGA 1700 bracket already installed. Noctua stuff always comes with these little clean wipes, so I might as well use them. So the board I'm using is a mini ITX from ASRock, the B660M ITX AC. It is a very cheap, very low spec board. This does everything I need it to do. I mean, all I'm doing mostly is just testing cards and slots and stuff like that. So it doesn't need any fancy stuff. I have 32 gigs of RAM in it, which is totally overkill, but I don't have really many smaller sets. These are 8 gig sticks, and usually what I like to do is when I sell old motherboards, I will pop in the older sets that I don't need, like the 4 gig sticks, the 8 gig sticks, and just put them in as like a kind of like a free bonus value add thing when I sell a motherboard. That way whoever buys it can get up and running right away with some memory and, you know, probably find it useful on the system or something. Other than that, I mean, it's got this like anemic heatsink and stuff on the VRM. Like, I would not run a i9 in this, but hey, it's got 3 fan headers, which is more than enough for the little test bench system. I've got an older SanDisk serial ATA SSD in it. It's 128 gigs. Big enough for Windows. It's really all it needs to hold, along with a couple of utilities for like erasing drives and that kind of stuff. I like to put on one of these little guys so I get power and reset and like the drive activity lights. And yeah, lets me use it as a test bench without like big wires running off. They're usually standardized. Actually, I mean, this is my own design. I made this PCB. I made it for an Asus board, the previous one, but as far as I know, companies have more or less standardized their front panel header connections, so we'll see if this works. I'm pretty sure it'll work, or it'll short out the motherboard, but you know, that's something to worry about later. Despite being the big selling point of 12th gen, this does not actually have PCI Express Gen 5. It's got Gen 4 for both the M.2 slot and the PCI Express slot. No big deal. Don't need them for it. You know, 5 is useless right now. 4 I'm not even using. The only thing I'd like on this board that is not on it, on you know, for a low end board, is I do like it when they put an M.2 slot on the back. I'd really like, even if it was just SATA, just to have one on the back, so I could like move this to the back and then I could use this slot for testing. Of course, I can throw in an adapter card and just put a NVMe drive on that. No big deal. Don't need a heatsink on that. Those SATA drives don't get hot. All that's left is to wire this thing up and make it look somewhat presentable. Alright, that's it for this tiny build. I decided to keep the fan orientation this way, even though it kind of chokes it off a little bit. It's an i3, doesn't matter. I mostly just wanted it more clear here for installing cards and getting the stuff, because like I said, this is mostly a test system. So yeah, I like the little design that has like everything together. You know, I have a Fractal Design Ion 560p on this. I'm trying to standardize all my power supplies to Fractal Design, but yeah, I can't really do that. They don't make a SFX one that is in the same series, so I'm going to have to wait until they... But other than that, all my ATX power supplies at least are slowly drifting towards Fractal Design. I just wish they'd make bigger ones. 860 watt is their biggest one. One day maybe they'll make a 1200 or 1000 watt, but until then, yeah, that's my test system done. Now I'm going to build the other one. Alright, as for the Capture PC, I'm going to be using the ever classic Lian Li 011 Mini. The Airflow one uses, there's 2 versions. There's this tempered glass one that has the fancy tempered glass on the front, and then there's another version that has a mesh front. But the mesh front one uses a full-size ATX power supply, and it's a lot bigger. So I want mini, since I already had this Corsair SF 750 SFX power supply that I was running in the little system. So I'm going to use this in this, since it takes the smaller power supply. And yeah, it's a beautiful case made for beautiful builds, but this isn't going to be beautiful. It's going to be really utilitarian, and I'm probably not even going to peel off the plastic from the tempered glass, because it's going against the side of a chair leg, table leg. So just like the previous case, it's going to have the plastic still on it. One day I may convert it to water cooling. I do actually have all the stuff in a drawer somewhere, or in a bin somewhere, to water cool this, except for a water block. I don't have one for the LGA 1700, but I have everything else I'd need. So maybe I'll do that, but I'm thinking of just a lot of Noctua fans running very slowly. So I'm probably just going to load it up with as many as I can find in that big bin of Noctua fans, and just kind of max it out with fans, at least along the bottom and the top, and a rear one. In terms of hardware, the exception of the motherboard, which I'll I'll get to in a second. Got a 10 gig NIC. This is a gigabyte low profile 1050 Ti. I don't have the full height bracket right now. It's on order from AliExpress. I actually sold that on eBay, and the guy returned it saying it doesn't work. And yeah, of course it does work. And he lost the bracket. eBay, what are you gonna do? Got 4 sticks of 16 gig, 33 megahertz Corsair fancy RGB RAM, which yeah, I just had it, and it's obviously totally overkill. I mean, what I need 64 gigs in a Capture PC for? It has 4 RAM slots, so I feel like that's good enough reason to put in 4 sticks. Fun story. This was originally purchased for my X299 main workstation that is in a nice full-size version of the case. I originally bought 8 sticks of this for a whopping $1,200 because it was right when RAM was super expensive. It did not work with 8 sticks installed and would cause RAM errors even when slowed down to like 1800 megahertz just to test it. Still wouldn't work. Can only run 4 sticks in that board. So I went out and bought a white version of 8 sticks for less money, and RAM had gone down like the year later. Officially approved by ASRock to run in that board. And they don't work. You can put 4 in, and any more than that, it doesn't work. So I don't want to blame ASRock for it. I have actually replaced the motherboard, and that didn't fix anything. So I kind of want to just say it's like just weird compatibility. Whatever. I'm not bitter. It was only thousands of dollars. I try to use this memory wherever I can because it haunts me. I have an older 256 gig NVMe SSD for a boot drive. I'm going to put this little copper heatsink on that. I have a random 860 Evo from Samsung. This is a serial ATA 500 gig drive that I'll use as a, just like temp recording space. And of course I have the i5 12400K, or sorry, 12400 that I pulled from the previous system. As for cooler, I'm going to use the giant NHD 15S because I had one and it's been sitting in a drawer forever. I actually bought it again for that X299 system as a way to test it without hooking up the water cooling loop. Yeah, it's been in a drawer for years actually, so I finally will put it in here since it's got room for it. Catch is I do need an adapter kit because this does not have an LGA 1700 mounting bracket, so yeah. $8, or if you send Noctua a receipt, they will send you a free one. But it takes 2 weeks and I didn't want to wait. As for fans for this and the case, like I said, I'll pull them out of my giant bin of Noctua stuff. As for motherboard, I have the ASRock Z690 Pro RS, which seems to be a pretty decent all-round low-end board. I mean, it has absolutely nothing particularly fancy about it. It's got, somewhat okay heat sinks and power delivery. I mean, I wouldn't want to run a major, like i9 in it. Yeah, that's good enough. Your usual assortment of USB ports. Oddly enough, no USB-C. I don't really need USB-C on it. Although the case does have USB-C and it has the internal header for one, so I can use that. 4 RAM slots, standard with an ATX board. Lots of slots so I can install both the GPU and NIC. Keep in mind these are only 4X slots. They're not 16X, but 4X works perfectly with a NIC, or at least a 10 gig NIC. Yeah, so, lots of serial ATA, all that stuff, none of which I'll use in this particular build. Board is perfectly cromulent for a cheap board. I think it's like $180 right now. Amazon actually had one at the Amazon warehouse that was a used one for $129. Score, because always check Amazon warehouse. There's a reason why I buy from Amazon so much. It's because they do actually have some good features aside from the evil. One thing I forgot to mention is it also has 2.5 gig LAN, which is pretty nice. Although my 10 gig switch doesn't support 5 or 2.5 gig because it's old. Don't think I can actually run it at 2.5 gig. But it's nice that it's there. One thing about this board is it does not have Wi-Fi. It does have a slot for a Wi-Fi module. It doesn't have actual Wi-Fi installed. If you go up to like 1 or 2 tiers up, you'll find plenty of motherboards that have it. I just don't need it on this. Well, as far as builds go, that was pretty straightforward. I mean, I didn't even have to completely fill up every single crevice of the back of the case with wires. I mean, it's really just around the power supply. No drives other than M.2. There's just a couple fans. That's it. I mean, like, it's a pretty straightforward build. One day, like I said, I might convert it to water cooling just to fill up the case a bit more. Until then, it's pretty sparse in here. I picked this case mostly because of its size. It's relatively small for an ATX case, and it has top mounted USB and USB-C. I need that for plugging in cameras and stuff like that if I'm using it as a capture PC. I can't really use these fans because I have some storage bins that are like right next to it under my desk. The airflow is just cut off anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Although the power supply is a little bit choked off with those things there, but it shouldn't matter. It's not going to be pulling much power at all. So what color goes with nice white and tempered glass? Beige. I stuck with my nice Noctua fans because, well, they work and they're quiet. And I wanted fairly quiet since I'm going to be recording with this thing. One thing I did notice is that the card is in a little angled, like almost like the motherboard doesn't quite line up with everything. I mean, the screws are lined up and everything. It just seems like it's a little off, and the IO shield's like a little off. I checked the back plates. These things can be removed for adjustment if you want to put in an ITX board, that sort of thing. Yeah, it seems like it's off by just a little bit. I ended up going with the built-in heatsink that's part of the motherboard. This NVMe drive isn't going to be doing much. It won't get that hot. It's not a super high-performance drive. Don't really need that fancy copper one. I did notice that the bottom of this case was like dented in. The fans, see, like if I push on them, I can kind of get it to hit. I'm gonna have to like bang that back into right shape. I don't know how that happened. It was well packed. Other than that, the build is done. One last thing, when I was going through the motherboard box, I realized that there were no M.2 screws included with the motherboard. They always include them separately. I think it's because the pick and place machines can't place them with the screws installed. They always include them in separate pouches. What are the chances that some psychopath bought this motherboard, took the M.2 screws, and then returned it?